The views and opinions of the guests of Veterans Archives do not reflect the views and opinions of Veterans Archives, its subsidiaries, or its partners. Hello and welcome to Veterans Archives. This is a podcast where you can learn about our military history in the words and voices of the men and women who lived and created it. I'm your host, Bill Krieger, and let's listen to our next story. Today is Monday, May 1st, 2023. I'm talking with Dan Hetfield, and he served. Today is Monday, May 1st, 2023. I'm talking with Dan Hetfield, and he served the United States Marine Corps. So Dan, we're just going to take it simple and start out with when and where were you born?
I was born here in Owosso, 1947. But yeah, other than going to Vietnam, this is where I've pretty much been.
Okay. All right. And then what about your parents? Are they, I assume that they're originally from the Owosso area as well?
My mom was born and raised in Frankfort, Michigan. And my dad was not born in Owosso. I can't think of the town, but his dad was a minister, and they roamed a lot. So he really didn't have a true home, until his dad, my grandpa, got into a church here in Owosso, and that's what kept him here ever since then. So.
All right. Well, what was it like growing up here in Owosso in the 40s and 50s? And then also, interesting fact for the folks at home, or for the folks listening to this, is that your name's really Richard, but you go by Dan.
Yep.
What's the story behind that?
Well, my birth certificate says Richard Dan Hetfield. I didn't even know I had a name, Richard, until I was probably maybe 10 years old, because my parents raised me on calling me Dan. And then, at some point you get to finding out different things, and I found out I had a first name of Richard. And I asked my mom, why am I going by Dan? And she said, well, we just like that better. Why don't you just name me Dan?
Right.
No.
Well, I think every family has one of those stories, right? But so let's talk a little bit about what it was like growing up here for you. What do you remember about your family, your parents, any brothers and sisters that you had?
I'm not sure you really want to go there, but we will. My parents, they divorced when I was probably 13, 14 years old. And my mom has been married 3 times, and my dad has been married 3 times. They both passed away since then. But so if you factor in all of the stepbrothers, stepsisters, half-brothers, half-sisters, the last count I was at was 22.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of brothers and sisters.
That's a lot of brothers and sisters. But yeah. But my dad, and it's really crazy that this would have been before I was even born, so I'm assuming it's in the early 40s. He divorced his first wife, and they had 4 kids. And the judge authorized him to have custody of the 3. The 4th one was only about 6 months old, and the judge thought it would be in the best interest of the mother to. But back then, that was unheard of, to have the father, take the kids like that. So I was raised with them. They were just like brothers and sisters to me, when I was growing up. So there's 7 of us at home. And we lived on the south side of town. It wasn't anything special. It was a, place for us to live. But we had a great life with kids. I mean, we had fun, neighborhood, and just it was a fun time.
Well, what was school like for you?
back then, we went from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. The school was, that'd be 4 blocks away from where I was living. And I just really, really enjoyed that school, you know. And back then, you act up, and teachers would let you know about it, and they did. And but I just back then, 7th and 8th grade, they had shop class, and I took the 7th and 8th grade shop class, and I knew right then that I'm going to be working with my hands. This is really what I like doing, you know. Reading, writing, arithmetic, I just let me work with my hands. And I ended up doing that my whole life. I never even retired till I was 71. It was just because I just loved what I was doing, you know. But school was great there. It was. High school, same way.
Now, did you play any sports or any of that while you were in school?
Well, a good friend of mine that we grew up with, I mean, I met him my freshman year in high school, but we're still friends today. We wanted to get a part-time job in the Eagles Club in Owosso. Friday night and Saturday night. They were looking for some young men to work at the coat check room as they come in. But you had to be 15 or 16, and you had to be going out for the Golden Gloves because they trained the boxers upstairs. So him and we were 15, not 16, but we lied our way into the Golden Gloves, and they let us take it on. And then we got the job at the coat check room. And we did pretty good money-wise because it was all tips. So that's when we started. But I had to go over to Lansing for my first fight.
Yeah.
And back then I was in the flyweight class, which is like, what's it? 92 pounds or less, which is what I was. And my first fight, I was 15, was up against a 21-year-old Mexican from Lansing area who was last year's state champ.
So this is your first fight?
My first fight.
Oh, no.
It lasted 32 seconds. But, you know, that's the price you pay to have the job that you want. So.
Right.
And then the following year, I went out for wrestling. It was a little, but I didn't do all that well. I mean, I was still I wasn't really heavy. You know? I mean, I went into high school 80 pounds. So, but boxing, wrestling, and I did some track. Never really was, wasn't some of the better ones. I just didn't. But my senior year, I went on co-op where I only went to school half a day and worked half a day. So I dropped all the sports from that. But,
so what kind of work did you do in co-op then?
Well, all through high school, I took as many shop classes as I could. Metal shop, wood shop, just whatever classes were available. And then I took drafting. And I just took a liking to drafting. I just loved doing that. So this company in town here, I went to work for them half a day and doing drafting work for them, which was unheard of to have, high school kids doing their work for them. But they really, really enjoyed the work I was doing for them. And I knew right then that this is what I want to do, And I've been doing design work from that day on. That's all I ever did, design work.
Well, I think Mark Twain said, if you find a job that you love doing, you never have to work a day in your life.
That's what my dad told me.
Yeah.
He says, you find a job you like, you'll never work a day in your life. And like I said, when I retired at 71, for the last 6 years, I was working 2 to 3 days a week, but still work. And that's when we went from drawing and designing on a board to go into the computer, and I had to make that transfer. And they wanted to send me out to Boston for 2 weeks of training. There was 4 of us they were sending. There was 12 of us in the company doing design work, but they picked the 4, and I was one of the 4, and I told them, there ain't no way I'm going to have a computer take over what I'm doing on the board. That ain't going to happen. I said, pick somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
So they did, and then they came back, and they had their own separate room with 4 computers in there. And little by little, I was going down there and watching these guys. Damn, man. And then these 4 come back and train 4 more. And I was on the first squad to get trained for that. And that was amazing, what you could do with that thing.
Oh, yeah.
And,
So let's go back a little bit, though. You made it through high school. It sounds like you survived Golden Gloves, which is a good thing.
Yes.
And at some point, you ended up in the military. So what happened from high school till the time you ended up joining the Marine Corps? How did that happen?
Well, I graduated from high school, and I knew I wasn't going on to college. I didn't have the money, and my parents didn't have the money, and I needed a job. So there was a company in Owosso, here, it's no longer here, that specialized in electric motors. And I got a job in there. But they wanted to put me working with the machines and not the drafting portion of it. So I started on that for probably 6 months, running mills and everything else, And I thought, well, that's kind of cool too,
Mm-hmm.
So then I got my draft notice. And all they told me was, this was Redmond's, a company I worked for, was, all we can do is guarantee when you get back, you're going to have a job. We can't guarantee it's going to be this job. And I said, well, that's fine, So then I got drafted March 23rd. My birthday was in February.
Mm-hmm.
2 of my buddies wanted me to go on a road trip with them. This was late February or early March. Because they said, look, you got drafted. You're going in. Let's go on a road trip. I said, okay, where are we going? They said, well, let's go to Florida by way of New York.
Somebody needs a new map.
We want to see New York, So we did. And then I was driving. I had a 57 Chevy, beautiful car. And I had a light out on the back, which I wasn't aware of. And we got pulled over in New York. And the cop says, you know why I pulled you over? I said, I have no idea. You got a tail light out. I said, all right. He said, I got to see your driver's license. Well, my driver's license expired in February 25th on my birthday. And I wasn't going to renew it because I knew I was going to be gone.
Yeah.
So they took me in and put me in jail for driving on an expired license. And he says, he's going to spend the night here, and then the judge will deal with it in the morning. So that morning, my 2 buddies showed up, and the judge says, give me one reason why I shouldn't just keep you here in jail. I said, well, it might be better than where I'm going. What? I said, yeah, I got my draft notice. I'm getting drafted. My 2 buddies and I were going to just go on a road trip and go back home, and I'll get drafted and see where it goes from there. He said, all right, I'll tell you what. Give me a $20 fine, and your word you'll never come back to this state again. You got my word. So the 2 buddies were arguing over who was going to spend the $20.
Right.
But we got out of there. We got down to Florida, parked the car in a parking lot right along the ocean there. And we needed a break, so we went down, laid there, and all 3 of us went to sleep on the beach and woke up, come back, and we left our wallets in the car, but it was locked.
Mm-hmm.
I was damned if they broke in and took 2 of them. They left mine for some reason. I don't know why. But so we had to turn around and head home with what money I had, which wasn't allowed. But we made it back. The car was on empty, and we had 43 cents to our name. So I donated the car to my brother, who was in college on a basketball scholarship. He was 13 months older than me. And the night before I got drafted, 3 of them, 3 other buddies of mine. Let's go out and celebrate with some beer. And I was just 19. So we did. I got drunk. They took me back to one of their houses, and I passed out in a chair. And the 3 of them said, hey, he's going to get his hair cut, so why don't we give him one? And they did. And they took me home, carried me in the bed, threw me in bed. And I had to be on that bus at 6 o'clock that following morning, here in Owosso, to get me down to Detroit.
Uh-huh.
My mom's screaming at me, you got to get up, you got to get up, you got to be up. I woke up, I walked out in the kitchen. She looked at me and she started screaming. What? I go in there and I look in the mirror and what the? They gave me the ugliest looking mohawk haircut you could come up with. So I didn't have time. I got dressed and she took me down there, and I went down to Detroit that way. And we get in line, and they told us every 11th person is going in the Marine Corps. So Ralph McKay, a friend of mine I also graduated with, was right ahead of me. Mm-hmm. He was 11. I pulled him out, and I said, have fun in the Marine Corps, buddy. So we go through the process, and then they take us in to get into a formation where they were going to sign us all into the Army. And they started the swearing-in process. And about halfway through, there was another military guy with a green uniform walked over to them, and they're chatting back and forth. And then all of a sudden, he goes, yeah. And I said to the guy behind me, I said, I think they're pointing to you. And he goes, no, you. And I goes, me? He goes, yeah, get down here. So they stopped the swearing in, and I walked down there, and he says, you go with this guy here, and he wants to take care of you. And, to me, a green uniform is a green uniform. That's right. All I know.
Right.
So he takes me, and he says, well, we're going to make a man out of you, I said, well, where am I going now to be sworn in? I says, the Army, you got another Army swearing in going on? He goes, Army? Do you not recognize this uniform? I said, looks like Army. It's a Marine Corps uniform. I said, well, I wasn't one of the 11. He says, you are now. He said, we're going to make a man out of you. What the hell?
What did you walk into?
So they put me on a plane, flew me out to San Diego, California, for boot camp. And it's one of them things where things happen for a reason.
Right.
I was on the plane, and I remember he was a corporal in the Marine Corps. And he happened to walk by, and he stopped, and he looks at me. Did you just get drafted in the Marines? I said, yeah. He says, you show up like that, you're going to have bruises on your body 6 months from now. I said, what am I going to do? He said, just a second. And he takes off, and he comes back and says, come on with me. And he took me back into the stewardess lounge. And there were 2 ladies back there, steward. Mm-hmm. And he says, all right, clean him up. Shave him. And they cut it all off, shaved me bald, And I went back and I sat down, and I mean, what's the odds of that happening,
Right.
So we get there. They put us on a bus, take us to base there. And the first thing they do is give everybody a haircut.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in line, and I go up there, and the barber says, well, sit down in the chair here. I said, well, I really don't need a haircut. He says, sit down in the chair. And I did, and he takes his clippers, and he hauls off and smacks me upside the head. And you had to pay for your own haircut then.
Uh-huh.
He smacked me upside the head. He said, all right, that's 50 cents. You're trying to screw me out of 50 cents, aren't you? But then I come out of there, and now we're all looking the same. So after that,
right.
Things were pretty smooth. But that's where that went. But
what a great story. I wanted to ask you, though, people were getting their draft notices. Obviously, you knew people who had already been drafted. This is kind of the Vietnam War is happening. What were the thoughts? What were you thinking when you got your draft notice and you knew that you were going to go? Like, what was kind of going through your head?
I already knew I was going to get drafted because they were drafting left and right. Unless you had a reason to get out of it, you pretty much was going to get drafted. I knew that was coming. I just didn't know when,
Mm-hmm.
But I know, I don't know them personally, but there were guys there that would put their foot in the car door opening and have their buddy slam the door on their foot and break their foot for them.
Right.
Just so they wouldn't, that's the kind of crap that was going on, But no, I knew it was just a matter of time. It was
Mm-hmm.
It was going to happen.
Were you afraid at all?
Not going in the Army, them guys all ended up in Germany.
Right. But that all changed for you, though, right?
Yeah, it changed. And again, I'll explain that to you once we start talking about boot camp.
Yeah.
What happened there. But no, I accepted it.
Okay. Well, we could jump into boot camp now because I'm interested to hear what happened after you got that amazing haircut.
Well, the first, we got our haircut, we got our gear and everything, and they didn't have any barracks for us. They were full, so they had tents set up, and we stayed in the tents. And Marine Corps boot camp training is 12 weeks. They said, you're going to get trained in 8 weeks. We need you,
Yeah.
So they cut it from 12 to 8. And then, so that next day, first thing in the morning, they called us out to fall in formation, introduced who was going to, what the heck is the name, that train you in boot camp.
Oh, the drill instructor?
Drill instructor, yeah. They had 3 drill instructors. And then there was an officer there also. He was given the directions. There was like 83 of us. We were all in formation. He says, all right, those of you that got drafted, raise your hand. And there's about 17 of us, He says, all right, I want you to step forward. So we stepped forward. He says, I want you to know that you ain't got the balls to join my Marine Corps. You had to get drafted into it. And I'm here to tell you, every one of you is going to Vietnam, and I hope you all die. And I thought, well, this is going to be fun.
Wow.
The Marines hated draftees. They did. They just, the officers, the ones that enlisted, we were all brothers. Mm-hmm. We had no issues whatsoever. It was just the officers. They just hated draftees. And we all ended up in Vietnam.
Right.
But during that 8-week training, they have all these different things they train you in. And then they grade you on all of these things. And there was a big chart on the main wall there with all of our names on it and all the different things we had to do through boot camp. and they would show you how good you were on this and that and that, and they kept track of all your numbers. And then at the end of the 8 weeks, the one that had the highest number automatically got promoted from private to private first class. That was at the rifle range, the running, all of the different testing and stuff we did. It just, and so we had about 2 days to go, and I was right up there, right on the top. Mm-hmm. And then the last day they posted it. I beat this other guy out by a point, so I was number one. Sweet, I'm going to get promoted, you know. Well, the next morning they pulled us all together, and then they announced the winner. And they announced the guy that was one below me. And I thought, what the heck? That's not right. So afterwards, I went over and asked him. I said, look, I'm number one on the chart. Why did he get it? He says, oh, we forgot. There's also 2 points for the one that is liked the most, which they made that up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this guy was enlisted. There's no way they were going to have a draftee take this. So they come up with this excuse and gave it to him. And I thought, man, this is not
right.
But that was how it started. Mm-hmm. That I just had this nasty taste for officers. And then there's probably 3 other incidents through my 2 years where officers just screwed me over royally, you know. Mm-hmm. I just, but no.
So you made it through boot camp. Unfortunately, they didn't promote you. So what happens after boot camp?
Well, that's when, because my numbers were so good, they picked about 5 of us to go to Camp Pendleton to Schools Battalion. Mm-hmm. And they taught us how to operate an ontos. I don't know if you're familiar with an ontos or not.
I'm not. Could you kind of describe what that is?
Yep. I'd show you a picture, but I'll tell you what it is.
All right.
It's an anti-tank weapon.
Okay.
It looks like a small tank.
Uh-huh.
But it's only 9 ton, where tanks are normally around 40 ton. And they had 6 106 recoilless on the top.
Okay.
Which meant we could shoot these on the fly. We didn't have to stop like you do with a tank. And then above them, there was 4 50 caliber spotter rifles. So we could, see that our spot's on target before we shoot the 106s off. And then up on the turret, there was a 30 caliber machine gun. Where the driver was down below, next to him, he had a 45 caliber grease gun. Mm-hmm. And then it was a 3-man crew, and we each carried a 45 caliber pistol. So for a 9-ton anti-tank, we had firepower.
I was going to say pretty well armed.
And it's ran on gas, not fuel oil. Mm-hmm. And we could get them up to about 40, 45 miles an hour. I mean, these things would just scoot. And they would go in and out of the rice paddies where tanks couldn't. They would just, but let's see, we got, ontos is a Greek word.
Oh.
Meaning the thing.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
All right, so I'm looking at a picture of the thing right now. Holy cow, that looks scary. I mean, if I saw that coming my way, I'd be a little bit frightened. There's a lot of stuff on there. Wow. So how long did you have to train in order to be a part of that crew?
I was there 2 months in training. And there wasn't that many ontos left. They weren't making anymore. They built these in the early 50s for the Army. Army didn't want them, so the Marine says, we'll take them. But they quit building them. And we were losing them over in Vietnam, mainly to landmines. That's the only thing that would take us out, was landmines. And we were losing them. So they didn't see a need to train anymore. We were going over, and by then, they pretty much would be out or that close. But we were the last crew to be trained.
Okay.
So, but then after the training, you're supposed to get 30 days R&R.
Right.
Well, they cut it to 20. And that was when there was an airstrike going on. So you couldn't catch a flight from California to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and got on a train. And it's 4 days to get you here, 4 days to get you back. I was on 20-day leave and ended up with only 12 days here.
Yeah.
So one of them things, but I go back, and then they load us up, put us on a plane. And
So
I did get to go to Hawaii.
Oh, on the way?
Yeah, that stopped and fueled.
Oh.
1 hour, told us we couldn't get off the plane.
Nice. So I was curious, when you trained to be a crew member, does that group stay together when you go overseas? Like, did you deploy with the people you trained with?
No.
Okay. I was just curious.
Take you over and assign you at different, because I was with Charlie Company.
Uh-huh.
There's Alpha, was it Beta, B?
Bravo.
Yeah. Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. I was with Charlie Company. We had 5 Ontos.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd always take 3 out, keep 2 back just in case we need them. But, it's crazy that we never had a base camp like a lot of them did. You go back to base camp, you got hot showers, you got good home-cooked meals. And we roamed the whole time there and just slept in makeshift tents and whatever we could.
So you didn't have a home?
We had no home. We roamed the whole time for, what's supposed to have been 12 months, but they extended my tour twice because they couldn't get a replacement.
Yeah.
And we lived, for my case, 14 months on World War II sea rations.
Now, I have heard these stories before. I've never actually talked with someone who had to do that.
Oh.
What was that like?
Some of the food was good. Some of it was nasty.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd come 12 of them in a box. So they turned the box over, cut the bottom out of the box, so you can't see what you're getting. You just reach in and grab one. And there's days you get good stuff, and there's days you get bad stuff.
So if you grabbed it, if you put your hand in that box and you pulled something out, what was the best thing that you could have pulled out?
They had like a chicken noodle soup, which was pretty good. And then they had a beef one, which was pretty good. But then there was some other stuff. I can't tell you what it was. It was just nasty. But the thing is, World War II, you're talking like early 40s.
Right.
These were actually made in the 30s.
Yeah.
And they're feeding them to us in the 60s.
That's some old food.
Well, I think I figured out why I look as good as I do at my age, because there was the heck is that they put in them to keep them from spoiling, like preservatives or whatever.
Oh yeah.
They had so much in there to keep them from spoiling, that I think it got into my body and helped me slow down.
So for anyone listening to this, the truth is Dan does look really good for his age. When he greeted me at the door, I thought, well, this must be his son. So maybe there's something to eating all those preservatives. Who knows?
Be. But no, there was a lot of trading going on. I mean, guys would, and we did have money. it was military money. But there's guys that would pay someone else to swap just to get something good that they could eat,
Yeah.
And the other guy would take the money, and but it was only 15. There's 15 of us, and then we had a lieutenant, and then a guy that had a small truck that he could go in and grab some stuff. There was 17 of us in the unit. But
so not having a home and kind of living from place to place and eating god-awful food, I have to imagine that you formed some bonds with these guys.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what was a day like there when you were there? I mean, anyone who's served in the military knows that no day is like any other day. They are all different. But if you could like put it together, like what would a day be like for you guys?
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you.
Most of the time, we didn't have a lot of time to just sit around. Okay, we go out, sweep, we get word there's Viet Cong here, Viet Cong there, and sometimes we would just go and protect the village because the word was they were going to come in and hit that village. We'd just go in there and protect the village. We were always active. It wasn't like we had time to just sit around and party, but we all just got along. I mean, I served with blacks, I served with American Indian, I served with some from where was he? Might have been Germans or something. But anyway, we didn't even look at it that way. We were just all brothers. We just got along great. Two of my closest buddies there. One lived in the Detroit area, and the other one lived in California. But when we left, we all, just wanted to go home. And that friendship just kind of went away. And we just wanted to put it in our past and go about our business. And it was like 60 years later, I got a call from one of the guys, the one that lived down around Detroit area. He wanted to get in touch with me.
So for the people listening, what I have in my hands right now is the Argus Press, which actually I'm very familiar with. But this is from Friday, September 2nd, 2016. And there is a headline that says, "Toasting a Wartime Friendship." And then the sub-headline is, "Owosso area man reunites with a friend from Vietnam." And there's these two really great pictures. And I got to be honest, you don't look a whole lot different in those two pictures. But these two great pictures of two friends. It looks like in one picture taken in Vietnam where you're sharing a beer, and another picture taken
was at his house.
At his house, okay, sharing a beer as well. So I do want to go back and talk about your experience in Vietnam, but can we talk about this reunion a little bit, and then maybe give some history to it by going back and talking about your experiences there, whatever you're willing to talk about?
Yeah, I went down there first and met with him and his wife, and then they came up here a couple months later, out at the bar, and we probably reconnected probably 4 different times, and I could sense there was something going on, and what it was is Gary had been diagnosed with brain cancer, and it was caused from Agent Orange. And shortly after that, then he passed away. But I got a letter back. I got out of the service in 1968. I got a letter in about 1975 from our government telling me that we were in the worst possible location at the worst possible time for Agent Orange exposure. So I have another friend in California. He has brain cancer now, and he's on his way out. Again, it was caused from Agent Orange. So, but at least I got to see him, you know.
Right.
So,
what was it like seeing him again after all that time?
The first thing when he was in his garage with the garage door open when I pulled in, and I got out of the truck and was walking towards him. And before we even got to each other, we both just tears running down our face. You know, we just. But
did it feel like time hadn't even passed when you saw each other again? I'm just curious because a lot of times veterans get together and it's like you weren't even apart.
Yeah, it didn't feel like 50 years by no means at all. You know?
Yeah,
it just seemed like maybe a couple of years passed by and but no, it didn't. It didn't feel like 50 years.
Well, there's a lot of emotion because of all the things that you share with the people that you're deployed with. I can understand that. Is there, are you willing to, would you like to talk about your experiences in Vietnam? Maybe some of the things that you went through with these guys that you formed this bond with?
Yeah. And again, I'm doing this because I've had it locked up in my brain for 50 plus years. Mm-hmm. My wife and my kids, they didn't even know. So after going through the process I went through VA, I'd be more than willing to share it. And I'm not doing it to brag by no means whatsoever.
No, and I don't think anybody would take it that way. And again, just to give anyone who's listening to this a little bit an idea of what we're talking about is Dan shared with me that a lot of the things that we're going to talk about now, he hasn't talked with anybody about until a friend of his suggested he go talk to the VA and kind of get some of these things out. And so I think in your own words, if we would have approached this a month ago or a couple months ago, we probably wouldn't even have this conversation.
No way.
But I'm very happy that you're willing to share it now. I think this is going to mean a lot to people who listen to this when you and I aren't here anymore. It'll really give some good context to the history that we share.
Yep. Well, there was 3 events over there that still get to me today. And one of them was we got word that there was some Viet Cong coming our way, and they wanted to send 3 Ontos out and do a sweep, see if we can find them and stop it in its tracks. So they picked my Ontos and 2 others. And whenever we go out on a situation like that, we rotate which Ontos is going to take the lead. Because it's the first Ontos that hits the landmine. And that day, our Ontos was number 1, which I had no regrets about it, but we headed out. We got close to where we were going, and we started taking some enemy fire. So I swung around. We were going to aim it in the direction where the fire's coming from. I went first, swung around. The second one right behind me come behind me and was going to park next to me. He come on the same track I was on. He come around, and just before he made his turn, he hit a landmine. Blew it up pretty good. Was on fire. So I jumped out of mine, and the lieutenant that was with me, that runs the show, come running over there. And we could tell right away the driver was dead. So the other two were in the back of the Ontos. We took a while, but we managed to get the back doors open. Mm-hmm. And there were two laying in there, unconscious, but they were both still breathing. The ammunition is in there. Gasoline is in there. It's on fire. So I crawled in and grabbed the first one and tried to get him out as far as I could. And then the lieutenant grabbed him, got him out of there. And he took him back to a safe zone as far as he could, and I'm getting the second one out. And then as I got him out, the thing just blew up, but we got him back to a safe zone. And there's not much you can do. They're unconscious, but they're breathing. Mm-hmm. And this lieutenant, I never liked him. From day one, he went through his training and got his officer, and they sent him over. I don't think he even knew what an Ontos was or what it was capable of doing. But the two guys are laying unconscious, and all of a sudden I hear him screaming at me, and I look over, and he's got his .45 pistol pointed at me. And he's threatening to shoot me if that individual dies. And I just looked at him. I said, you need to get it together. You need to get it together. Get a hold of your radio operator. Get a chopper in here. We can get these guys on the chopper. They got a shot at it. Just do it. And he's... and he gets his radio operator, and they sent a medevac chopper in, and we got them both loaded on there. Mm-hmm. And then he says, I want you on that chopper also. I said, for what? He says, you got damage to your left ear, which I did have. I couldn't even hear out of it. It was just, because that's the side that was on when it hit,
Right.
He says, just go get it looked at, So I did. Got on there, and they flew us to a makeshift hospital, and they took those two in one direction. They took me over to another section, and he looked at it, and he says, there's damage to your ear. It's going to be that way, and it's going to get worse over the years. But the screeching, ringing sound you're hearing now, he says, give it a couple days, and it should go away. Mm-hmm. And it did, But so then they flew me back to where our little base camp was, And as I got off the chopper, I was headed over to where my little tent is, and the lieutenant called me into his tent. I said, what's up? He said, well, I'm here to apologize. I lost it. Yeah. And I just was hoping you could keep this to yourself and not share it with. I said, I can do that for you. I said, I understand the situation, and I'm just glad you didn't shoot me.
Yeah.
But he says also, I just submitted you be applied to, or be given the Bronze Star with Combat V for what you did. I said, you don't need to do that. He said, it's already done. I said, all right. I says, I don't want no Purple Heart. I says, I said, that's fine. I'll just leave it at that. So, we never really got along, him and I. Mm-hmm. I just could sense it. There was another situation where we were out doing a sweep, and we started taking fire. He said, all right, line them up, one on each side, boom, 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 let's let him have it, So he's standing behind us. He says, all right, let's let him have it. And I'm just going, you need to get out of the way. This thing is going to blow you up. This is recoilless.
Right.
It's just as much pressure coming out the back. I said fire, So I looked over at the other guy, and he was... So we fired, and next thing you know, he's doing circles. Come down on the ground and just... man, I didn't know. Well, no.
Tried to tell him. You tried to tell him.
And this is our leader,
Right.
So I don't know. It's weird. But
Well, I'm just curious. Do you know what happened to the two guys that they might have backed out?
It's in my article I wrote. I had to fill out 5 different situations in Vietnam to qualify for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
That was one of them. And that's the one thing I noted in there was it still bothers me to this day that if they made it out or not,
Right.
And my daughter, which she loves her veterans, loves the Marines, and she said, Dad, you can go on the website and look at the wall and see if their names. And I said, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
And she went in there and looked at it, and neither one of their names showed up. So I left there with my own thoughts, telling myself that they both made it home, they both fell in love, they both have kids and grandkids, and they're living a good life. That's what I wanted them to happen. I couldn't guarantee that, but that's the way I would look at it. And the fact that their names don't show up on the wall gives me hope that they may not be alive today, but they probably made it back home okay.
Right.
So, but they extended my tour twice. I don't know if I told you that or not.
Yeah, it was supposed to be 12 months.
Well, I took it to 13, then they took it to 14. So.
Right.
But luckily, I got out of there just about a month before the Tet Offensive kicked in. That's when they really started taking over. The Viet Cong did.
Right. It was a mess, actually.
It was a mess. Oh, there was one other incident over there if you want to get into it.
Yeah, I think if you're willing to share it, I think this is helpful for people for lots of reasons.
We got word that there was a village, and they have the rice paddies right there at the village. And they harvest the rice paddies, then they pile them up in the middle of their main little street there, and they tie them up to dry them out. Mm-hmm. And we were told that this particular place, they're stashing food, ammunition, and weapons at the bottom of these posts. And they wanted us to go in and check it out. So we took 3 of them again, headed there, got close to the village, and there was rice paddies on both sides, but there was a small enough drive that we could get the Ontos down through there to get to the village. And as we started down, we started taking some fire. Wasn't much, and we were sure it was sniper fire in the trees just before the village. Mm-hmm. And we had a captain with us this time, which has never happened. He would always stay back where he actually had a base camp that he operated on, but he wanted to go out on one, so he come along. And as we started taking fire, and he come over and he says, I want you to launch a couple over there to let them know we're coming after them. And I says, well, if it's all the same to you, we would just soon have 2 Ontos line up, and each one of us will shoot 1 round. And he said, why would you want to do that? And I says, we've been doing it all along, because if we go up to that village and we find innocent kids and innocent adults injured or dead from this, we can at least tell ourselves it was the other Ontos, not ours, and hopefully try to get some good night's sleep out of it.
Right.
And he said, well, I never would have thought of that. That's fine, go ahead. So we launched a couple of them. Then started towards the village. Their firing had stopped. And as we got close to the village, over along the side, I heard some screaming. And I look over, And it's a mother laying on her back and a child on her shoulders, maybe a year old. Both of them just screaming. And they were both injured.
Yeah.
So this captain called me over. He was over in an area by himself. He calls me over there. I walk over there, and what's going on? He said, we got to get in and sweep this village. He said, so I want you to get on your on toes and just go over there and run over them, put them out of their misery, and then we'll move on. I said, why don't you just get a medevac in here? They're alive. We can save them, maybe. He said, we ain't got time for that. He says, I gave you an order. We're in a combat situation. Do it. So I go back to my on toes. And I told myself, there's no way in hell I can do this. So I looked over at him. I said, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. And I put my hands in front of me, tipped my head down, closed my eyes. I just waited. And then I hear 2 rounds go off. I look up. And he shot them both. And he come over and he told me, you ever fucking disobey an order of mine again, I swear to God, I'll shoot you. You understand? And I said, sorry, I can't do it. He said, now let's get in there. So we go in and we pretty much destroyed all of their rice stalks.
Yeah.
And didn't find a thing. Wasn't nothing. So all we got out of it was destroyed their meals or food and killed their mother and their child. But
all that because of bad intel.
It had to have been.
Yeah.
It had to have been.
Yeah.
But
I think it took a lot of courage to not do it, to stand up for what you believed in. I mean, that guy did what he did, but that clearly wasn't your fault by any means.
But if I would have done what he asked me to do, I would not have this today.
Right.
There's a chance I'd be living on the frickin' street. And that's a lot of veterans living on the street is because they can't live with themselves. Either they were forced to do something or they did something that they regret.
Right.
A lot of veterans that are homeless can't live with themselves. And there's a chance I would have been one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And but when like I said, it was like 6 months ago, I shared that with my wife and kids. And they had no idea that that's been eating away at me all these years. But
how did I mean, I can't say I know how it felt to carry that for all those years. I know things that I carried. But how did it feel to finally just say it?
I feel great right now. I do. Having this conversation with you, it's just, it's a little touching, but I feel great. But, when I got back, I wanted a house where I didn't have neighbors. I didn't want to be around people.
Right.
And especially strangers. I didn't want to, if I go into a restaurant, I want my back at the wall. I don't want people behind me. And I wouldn't even take my daughters to a daddy-daughter dance because I didn't want to be around strangers. It ate at me all the time, I have to make up excuses why I can't take them, And it just, but they,
well, and unless they know, it's hard for them to understand too, right? I mean, did talking to them now help shed a little light for them on how you were when you got home?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Let's kind of go back in time. You end your 2 extensions. It's time to come home, and you get here. If there's something you want to fill in
No,
between.
no, you're going
feel-
right where I'd like to go.
Okay, well, good. So, but I mean, feel free to interrupt me anytime. But my thought is, what was it like to come back?
Well, they notified us on the plane back. This was when the hippie movement was really taking over. And if you were in a uniform, you're considered a baby killer and all this shit, So they told us on the plane back, get your uniforms off, get some regular clothes on, because they see in uniform, even at the airport, it's not going to be pretty. So again, they give me a 20-day pass, not your 30, but so I did get a flight home that time, and I come home and enjoyed my 20 days. And but what really I couldn't understand was when I come home after extending my tour twice, I had just over 3 months to go.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody and his brother was getting early outs. You didn't even have to go back. Just check out and thanks for doing your job. And not me. They sent me back to El Toro Air Base in Anaheim, California. I had just over 3 months to go. This isn't right, So I go out there. They give me a van and a little tube, about so tall to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go off base at 7 o'clock in the morning at this one intersection where there are no stop signs and no lights. And it's a lot of military traffic coming through there. So I directed traffic from 7 to 8 in the morning. And then I go back and direct it again from 5 to 6 in the evening. So rather than give me an early out, they work me 2 hours a day and pay me for it, a regular pay. And I'm thinking, what? This isn't right.
Yeah.
So I did that until I had about 40 days left. And then my commanding officer says, you need to go over to so-and-so. There's an officer over there that needs to get a hold of you. So what's that about? He said, I don't know. But I said, all right. So I go over there. And he says, sit down, And he says, we just got the paperwork back on a psychoanalysis that we just did for you, And it took a while to get the information back, but we just got it back. And I said, well, what's this about? And he says, well, it shows that there's no way you were going to make it on the outside. So we're going to help you out and let you re-enlist. And he says, we're going to, I get that term now, where you have kids, young men come in and talk to you about joining the service.
Oh, you'd be like a recruiter.
Recruiter.
Yeah.
Thanks. They said, we're going to make a recruiter out of you. And he said, with your story that you got to tell, they're going to just want to join the Marines, So we're going to have you doing that. And that's when it dawned on me why they didn't give me the early out. This was set up all along, that this is what they wanted. And I said, look, I didn't join the Marine Corps. You guys come and got me. I gave you 110%. And now I did my job, and I'm out of here. And he said, well, you're not going to be able to make it on the outside. I said, I'll tell you what. You give me your phone number, and I'll call you in a year and let you know how I'm doing. Well, he didn't appreciate that.
Can't imagine. Can't imagine that he did.
So he just said, all right, get out of here. Get out of here. Go. All right. So I went back to barracks, and my commanding officer said, well, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything. I listened to what he had to say, and I told him how I felt. He said, well, tomorrow, starting at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're to go to the mess hall, and you're on KP duty. till 10 o'clock at night. And I goes, what? He said, that's what I'm telling you. I says, I'm a corporal, non-commissioned officer. Non-commissioned officers don't do KP duty. He said, well, they made an exception for you. So I had 40 days to go. 38 days. I showed up at 4 in the morning and left at 10 at night. They would give me bathroom breaks and they would feed me a couple times. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, you have a decorated veteran coming home, and this is what you want to treat him like? I said, I don't get it, And so they gave me 2 days to get the paperwork in order to check out, but I have nothing against the Marine Corps. I don't. I love the Marines. But they're just something, I don't know. I always had a thing about officers ever since then. I just, but that's just the way I feel. But
I can understand that based on your experience. So you finally get out of there. Clearly you know how to work in a kitchen because you were doing it for so many hours.
Well, all they did was peel potatoes.
Yeah.
They give me a crib to set on.
Uh-huh.
And a knife. And I peel potatoes the whole freaking time I'm in there. And right next to me was an automatic potato peeler. And I asked him, why can't I use this? I waste too much potato. You got to. I still like potatoes today.
Okay, I'm glad you said something. I didn't want to be flippant
I
with
still like
you.
Potatoes.
I was going to ask you that question.
I just don't peel them.
Right. Somebody else can do that. Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly. So you get your paperwork. You get the heck out of there as quickly as you possibly can. What happens after that?
Well, I come back home.
Uh-huh.
And they held a job for me, but they said that job you had is no longer available. Would you mind doing some drafting work for us? Yeah, I'd love to. So
yeah,
I started doing drafting work for them, and then I was dating my wife at the time, and this would have been around 71. I got out in 68. I bounced around at a couple of other little places, but no, that was afterward. No, I got out. I went back to work there, and then they said they're moving to Arkansas. And this was when a week before that, the head honcho there, I talked to him. I said, hey, I'm getting ready to get married. Are we safe here, this job? And he said, oh, yeah, we're going to be here forever, Okay, so, my wife and I got married. I come back from my honeymoon, and they notified me they're moving to, I said, crap. And I wasn't about to move down there. And my wife, she grew up on a farm and has brothers and sisters and her mom and dad, and I couldn't do that to her,
Yeah.
So I bounced around after that at a couple of different jobs. Nothing special. I wasn't doing what I liked to do. And then another opening opened up in another factory in Owosso. So I went and applied for it. And they hired me. Wasn't giving me much pay. But at least it was a job. And I worked there about 6 months, and they come right out and told me, they said, man, you're doing twice the work that the guy that worked here before you was doing. They said, we appreciate it. I said, okay, I've been here 6 months. How about a raise? And he says, well, let me see what I can do. And he goes to the owner. The owner comes back and he says, we ain't got money to give you a raise right now. Just keep up the good work. Mm-hmm. Well, the next day, there was an article in the paper that Midland Ross, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they were right next to where you worked there.
Okay, yes, I am familiar with
so
that.
Midland Ross had an article in the paper that they're looking for designers, and and it's just for Vietnam vets. They wanted to show their
right.
Oh, geez. So at lunch there, I went over there and talked to them. They hired me right on the spot. I said, well, I got to give him a week's notice. That's fine. So I went back and told him, I said, I'm out of here in a week. I'm going to Midland Ross. And, we decided we could give you a raise. I said, no, I'm done. If this is what I have to do to get a raise, I'm done.
Right.
So I went to work for Midland Ross and doing design work. Loved every minute of it. And I was there 18 years. And they decided to move to Kansas City. And I'm not taking the kids out of school. I'm not, so. General Motors in Flint got wind of Midland Ross moving to Kansas. Mm-hmm. And there was 12 designers working there. So one of their, I can't think of who it was. They sent a guy over to take us out to lunch. So 4 of the designers were going to go to Kansas. So there was 8 of us. So the 8 of us went out to lunch. They says, we could use you over in Flint, General Motors, but you'll be a contract designer. You won't be, one of them.
Yeah.
I said, that's fine. Do we get benefits? And he said, oh, absolutely, So we took that. The 8 of us jumped on that. And then the head honchos at Midland Ross got wind of it. And they said, well, we were going to hope you guys would go at least out to Kansas City for 10 weeks and train people out there how to do what you're doing. And I said, well, sorry, they hired us. And they said, well, we'll give you each a $50,000 bonus on top of your pay, cover all your expenses out there. So I called the guy back at Midland Ross, or at GM, and he says, hey, as long as we get you in the end, that's all we're concerned about. Go get them.
Bonus. Bonus.
So we went out there for 8 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Or it was, 10 weeks. Went out there, and we did our best, but I don't see how you can train somebody in 10 weeks to do what you've been doing,
Right.
They specialized in brake systems for semi-trucks, trailers, buses, and there's a lot to it.
It's almost an art.
It is.
I mean, there's a lot to learn in the engineering part of it, but it's almost an art.
So I spent 12 months or 12 years I was at GM in Flint. Mm-hmm. And they took really good care of me. I mean, they pay overtime where I was. You didn't get paid overtime, and it just took really good care of me. And then they decided to shut that up, and they're moving the whole thing down to Warren. Oh God!
Here we go again.
So I told them, I said, I'm not going to drive down to Warren, and then work, because we were working. Our normal work was 55 hours a week.
Yeah.
Every week it was. And they said, I'll tell you what, you come down, we'll let you start at 6 a.m, get you out of here at 2:30 in the afternoon. The traffic coming in, really good. The traffic going out at that time's really good. And you will never have to work overtime. So, all right. And I did that for about 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. And then GM started losing money. And they let all their contract designers go. So here I am again, And I wasn't out a week, and there was an article in the paper. They're hiring a designer up on 13 just before you get to Saginaw. And I thought, what the heck? So I looked it up, and it's a small little factory, and they make road repair equipment for asphalt roads. Uh-huh. And they're looking for a designer. So I called them, and they said, yeah, come on up. We'll interview. I went up there and interviewed them. They hired me on the spot. And I worked there probably about 8 years. And then I turned 60. Well, I told them I was going to retire at 62, start drawing Social Security. And they said, well, we just got a big order from California for 5 trucks. And we've never done them before. I said, well, why would you even take up the order then, because they thought you were going to be here. I like that challenge, though, of doing it. So I says, I'll tell you what, I'll work till I'm 63, and then I'm out of here. So I did. And the truck went over real good. They were real happy with what we did for them and stuff. So, and they had the old boy that owns it. He was 85. His wife's 85. They're there every day working, you know. And so at 63, I was checking out the door, punched my card, and Ed was standing there. And he said, "You can come back whenever you want, Dan, whenever you want." And I said, "Ed, I can't work right now. Once you start drawing Social Security, you're limited to how much money you can make." And I says, "Until you're 66, then that cap goes off."
Right.
He says, "Really?" And I says, "Yeah." And he says, "When's your birthday?" I says, "February 25th. Okay. Well, the old boy went in, took paper and pencil, wrote down February 25th, 1966, call Dan. So I was laying on that couch, taking a little afternoon nap, and my phone rings. What the heck? I pick it up. I said, "Hello." He said, "Dan, this is Ed." I said, "Ed, how you doing?" He says, "Hey, you're 66 now. You ready to come back to work?"
Oh my gosh.
So I went back and I worked anywhere from 2 to 3 days a week, but until I was 71. I said, I got to hate it all.
Right, right. How could you not go back? Because this guy's, 89 when he's calling you.
Yep.
So how could you not at least go back for a little while?
But and I enjoyed what we did there, you know. And it was just me and one other younger guy in the design room, you know. And I was basically teaching him also. And he was real appreciative of it. And it was fun. I enjoyed it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. So now you're actually retired. Sort of, kind of.
I have a job on Friday mornings at Central Grade School, where my daughter teaches and my granddaughter goes to school there. Mm-hmm. So Friday mornings I go up there and help them pop popcorn.
Oh, that's a labor of love. I think that's what they call that.
I don't get paid for it, but
right. You got to do something though, right?
Oh yeah.
So now you're enjoying the kids and the grandkids and the family.
Yeah, and my wife and I, we like to do some traveling and but
I think some people might say you lived an amazing life.
It's, I like to think of it as it's a simple life we're living. We're not doing anything, out of the ordinary, and we're not buying all these toys and stuff.
Right.
And we just enjoy life.
But you lived a good life anyway.
My wife says the way you were raised with the divorce and all that, because my brother and I, when my parents divorced, we were not good kids.
Yeah.
We weren't. We were out drinking beer at 14, 15 and just getting in trouble. And that, I thought I could take that same attitude when I went in the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take a week for me to realize that they're the boss, I'm not. And they straightened me out. And for that, I owe them big time. I come out of there a whole different person than I was going in. It's just...
Well, we've talked about a lot of things this afternoon. This has been amazing. I've really enjoyed this. You've done a lot of things in your life. But I want to ask you one more question before we're done talking. And we're probably not done talking when we turn off the recorder, but at least we're done recording. And really that is, people are going to listen to this 25 years from now, 50 years from now, maybe even 100 years from now, God willing. And neither one of us will be here unless something changes in the medical world pretty soon. What would you like to leave people with? What would you like people to take away from this conversation that we're having today?
Well, just this is my thought. And I look at the high school kids today. They are nothing like what high school kids were when I was in high school. And a lot of them lack discipline. And I just, I know what the Marine Corps did for me. And there's a lot of kids out there that need that kind of treatment. They really do. And without it, their lives are going to really suck. But that's just my personal feeling.
Mm-hmm. But, some discipline in our lives does not hurt.
Mm-mm.
That's for sure.
And we're blessed. Our 3 kids, they all have jobs they love. They just, my wife did the right thing by them. So
you probably had something to do with that. But, all right. Well, thanks again, Dan, for taking the afternoon to sit and talk with me, to share your story, to really kind of share some things that are tough to share. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Oh, good.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Veterans Archives, the podcast that brings you the story of the men and women who have created and lived our military history. If you or someone you know served in the military and would like to share your story with Veterans Archives, please go to www.veteransarchives.org, select the Apply Now button, and fill out our application, and someone will get right back with you. Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on the donations of our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and you support our efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the Donate button. Any donation is certainly appreciated. Look for Veterans Archives on your favorite social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Veterans Archives. Like, follow, and share our page. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you or someone you know is a veteran and you are struggling with mental health issues, please dial 988 and select option 1 for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. Please be sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Veterans Archives.